Okay, guys and girls, I want to get you updated on where we are on this project. You may recall in the last video we had removed the crankcase cover, and the bearing inside was stuck to the crank shaft, and so we kind of cleaned that up a little bit, put a new bearing in there, and reassembled that whole deal. Learned some things about the oil pump right there. And so anyway, in the process of doing all that, reinstalled, put everything back together, put it back in the Mule, and was very disappointed to find out that the problem was not fixed. Our compression was still pretty low at around 40 psi. So even though we had redone, we redid all our top end, our valves or whatever, and replaced the head gasket and the seals down here and everything, we're still getting poor compression. So we've pulled it back off, and I took the piston out, which actually was connected here by your rod end caps, and that was just a matter of a couple of 8mm bolts around there. Just whenever you take that thing off, if you're doing the same project, just make sure you remember the orientation of the that piece, the cap that goes on the other side there, and because you want to install that the correct way. So anyway, and also so here's the piston itself. It's been soaking in automatic transmission fluid. I've actually already removed the rings, but the rings that were in there were completely compressed all the way in, so they weren't springing out, and they weren't creating any sort of a seal on that cylinder wall. So anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to clean the rest of this thing up. Your arrow right there points toward the converter side, which is also this side. That's the the business end of the crankshaft there. So I wanted to share with you too what we did to the cylinder wall here. I did not use a ridge reamer. I was able to get the crankcase out, or the piston out of the top here without doing that. I used this product here, one of these flex hones and a drill bit, which was very handy, along with the oil, to create a nice cross-hatching pattern. I don't know if you can see that there, but I feel pretty good about that. There's still a little bit of corrosion there. I topped off. I used some of this crocus cloth, which was recommended from some other forums and YouTube videos. So I used this crocus cloth to kind of clean up some of this before I took the piston out, and it was not that big of a deal. So anyway, what I think we're going to do now is clean up the piston. I need to get in here. I bought some toothbrushes here. You can see that I'm going to use, in combination with this, where is it here? This Chem Dip. I'm going to soak the piston in Chem Dip for about an hour, and then we'll come back after we have after that process has happened, and then we'll kind of hit up those grooves with the toothbrush and see what happens. If we haven't met yet, my name is David, and in my videos I try to share with you my experiences in trying to save a few bucks on home, auto, boat, RV, ATV, anything under the sun that could be done yourself to just keep a few more dollars in your pocket. If this seems like something that you would be interested in, please consider subscribing. We've got a lot of great stuff on the channel and much more in the kitty. And I picked this stuff up at AutoZone. I think Walmart carries it, but maybe it's only a ship-to-store or a ship-to-home type deal. I think Advanced Auto Parts also has it, but in my area it was the same kind of deal. They didn't have it in stock in the store, so I had to go to AutoZone. So let's see here. It comes with this nice little basket here. You probably want to put on some gloves for this, so we'll do that now. Okay, so we've got a nice little basket here, and I think what I'm going to do is just drop the piston in there and let it soak for about an hour. Okay, and so since I have a little time, I went ahead and tried to use my crocus cloth in a kind of a direction like this right here. And you know, I think you want to stay away from the up and down motion on that, but tried to knock off some of that corrosion in there. But then I guess my process after that, since I've already gone through the process on the flex hone that actually involves soap and water, I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of how I did some of that. But anyway, my process after sanding off that little amount right there, I hit it with some WD-40. But what I wanted to show you here is I stuck an old t-shirt in here to kind of protect the crankshaft, and then we'll remove that when we're totally happy with our bore, which I think I'm pretty close to being there right now. So I think one thing you want to do, you can see some pink down in there. I took just a white cloth here, and you'll put a little automatic transmission fluid on that, and you'll rub it around in there, and if it doesn't come out, you know, just red, then you've still got some dirt, and kind of hit it with a little WD-40 again, and rinse and repeat until you can get a clean cloth or a red cloth that only has the red ATF fluid. So one of the things that I kind of used here, or after that, was I've got a little bottle. I think these are like sewing machine bottles, but I filled this one with just 10W30 motor oil. And after I was done with that whole process there, I just kind of got this thing and just oiled around in there, and used another white rag to get more to rub that stuff in. So I want to say that our cylinder bore is ready for the piston, and that cross hatching there is just beautiful. Okay, now with our gloves back on, we're ready to pull out our piston and see what magical transformation has happened. Set that there, and hopefully some of this carbon can just be brushed away with the toothbrush. And let's see what that looks like on the top of that. Okay, now I'm going to spend a little time just brushing on this. I won't put you through the misery of that. I'll put the camera in time lapse, and we'll see what I can do with this. After I cleaned that, I went ahead and let this soak, put it back in the soaker, and it's been in here for another 2 hours. I just wasn't happy with the amount of crud that was coming off there. So let's take a look at what we have now. And you know, I ended up using a stiff or a firm bristled toothbrush. I wouldn't use that on my teeth, but I think it's just fine for this. And I don't know, and that seems to be getting a little bit better in there. I may end up using a steel brush to try to get some more of this off here, and then maybe hit it with some WD-40, and I think we may call that a day. See, like there's some crud right there that I want to get that off. I just feel like it's going to need a little bit of extra persuasion to do that. Let's get some of this here. And, you know, I'm not so worried about this about this bearing in here. We're just going to, whenever we finish cleaning this up real good, we'll hit this all with WD-40 and let that sit for just a second, and then just put some motor oil in there, and that should be fine. I'm not too worried about that. If you have concerns about that, please leave that in the comment box, and you know, we'll all learn about this together. And yeah, so there we are with this. Again, trying to kind of run my finger across there, and some of that feels a little bit it's almost like an indentation right there that's maybe a defect. Kind of worried about that, but you know, technically this should be the ring should be sitting out, should be pushing out a little bit from that, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. So yeah, let me grab that brush and we'll get back and hit some of this stuff with that. And this is just a steel brush here, and that seems to be doing a pretty good job of getting those deposits off. And in fact, I may let this sit. I may let it, I may shoot that with some WD-40 and let it sit just a little bit more. And actually, I should probably read the directions on here and find out what it recommends. But, you know, I guess in the other videos that I've watched, it seems to suggest that 2 or 3 hours should be sufficient on that. All right. Okay, yeah. If you can see, but there's some stuff down in that groove right there that I'd like to get out of there. Okay, I'm going to call this pretty much good, and we'll go ahead and clean this out real good with WD-40, and then we'll throw some, put some motor oil in there. And again, I'll use my handy little container here that I have filled with 10W30, and we'll just apply that liberally everywhere in here, in those rings, and all over it. Okay, and here's your part number here, 13008-6007. That's the piston ring set standard. If we had bored out the cylinder, then we would need to get a different size there. So, let's open these up. Got 1, 2, and the scraper rings there. Okay, so let's get our oil on this, and let's just kind of run that around there, that in there. Kind of get that bearing there. And pretty much just all over it. Just kind of massage that in there. And you know, we really we just kind of want to prevent any kind of flash rusting or anything with some of this stuff, and just get it ready, get it lubricated, get it ready to assemble. So let's start with the expander ring here. You can't screw this one up, so that's a good place to start. And Just kind of walk it down until we get to the very bottom. And what you want to make sure of is that these little things don't overlap. Sometimes it's good to have a little tool here to kind of pick around and find your edges. Which here's our ends right here. I don't know if you can see that, but right there, we just want to make sure that those meet up and that they're not overlapping. And they're not, so that's good. Now, this is back to the flywheel side, and we'll take a look at the manual here. And I'm sorry, not the flywheel side, the converter side. This is the business end of the motor. So let's take a look at the factory service manual, and that'll help kind of identify how they think we should place these rings. Okay, so in the factory service manual here, we're going to start with the lower steel rail and the upper steel rail, and those gaps are going to be C and D. So this direction right here, that's the arrow, that's the direction of the arrow on the top of the piston. So we're just going to want to put the lower one first. So the lower one is going to point down this way, and the upper one is going to point up this way. Those two rings are interchangeable, and they are also, there's no difference in up or down, so there's nothing to mess up here. Okay, and we're going to just walk this one down in a similar manner. Trying very carefully not to overstress it. If it gets stuck, you just need to stick your finger in there and kind of bring it down again. And again. And you may have to grab in there and kind of pull that thing out to get it to where your fingers need to be to move it on along its way. Okay, and then you see that we've got that one all the way in the bottom now. Now we'll just do the same thing with the top one and fit it in above that expander ring. Okay, so now that one's on the second ring. We just need to move it down one more. Okay, and so now with this little tool here, we can kind of pull, I want to pull this top ring around to where it's in a different location. So these things are just about opposite. The bottom one lines up here, the top one lines up over here, and we don't have any overlapping going on our expander ring. So the bottom, the scrubbing ring or whatever, is it's good to go now. Okay, and again, referring to our factory service manual, the second ring right here has a R on the top of it, and this one's a little bit darker, and it should that R should face up. And you'll notice the top ring is symmetric. There's no angle to it. The top ring, there's no marking, and you can install it either way. Okay, and here is our second ring with the R, and we will install that one with the R facing up. We're going to use a little tool here. Let me get a little oil on my fingers here. We'll kind of rub that down. We're going to use this little tool right here, if I can grab it, to push those ends apart and to help us get it on there a little bit easier. And then the second ring gap, we're going to want it to be back down in this area right here. So we'll just put it on like this right here, and with the R facing, where's my R? Yeah, here's my R right here. So it'll go on just like this. Okay, so that one has tried to come down a notch. Let's go ahead and pull it down to that one, and then push this out to get it to slide on down. There we go. And that should now ride in there. This should be positioned down here, right around that area. Okay, there's our gap. Now it's time for the top ring, the compression ring. And like I said again, the compression ring can be it can be either way. And on this Kawasaki engine, it seems like this one it's kind of got a more metallic look on the edge there, whereas the second ring had more of a blackish kind of look. So we use the same process here, and the only thing different is we're going to try to put our gap up on that side of the piston. Alright, then we'll just turn this like this so we can try to put it right there. Okay, and now that one can slide up like that right there. So your whole deal, everything should be easy to move, and we'll go on to the next step here. Okay, and you can see here, you know that you've done it the way that the factory service manual wants you to do it. If you can see your top rail right here, the gap there lines up with your top ring, and then over here, 180 degrees off, your bottom rail lines up somewhat with your second ring there. So I'm going to call that a success, and we're going to get to putting this back down in the cylinder. Okay, I guess this is as good a time as any to remove the T-shirt from that has been protecting our crankshaft. You still want to go ahead and just kind of try to keep that thing out of the way of the connecting rod as it comes down in there. So I think that's going to keep us in a safe position there. Let's go ahead and just run a little bit more motor oil in here. We'll kind of, run that around. And we have a handy tool here. Let's get a little bit more on our piston. So a little bit more there. All right. And then we have a tool here that we're going to use, and we're going to kind of use this ring compressor to kind of compress the rings before we put it down in there. So let me see what I want to do with that. Okay, our arrow goes toward the converter side, and tell you what, let's also put some oil on the inside of this thing. You can see that here, there. Just trying to make sure everything has a smooth transition. Tell you what, I'm going to pull this out just a little bit like that. Try to keep that there. And you may have to push it back up. I guess what I'm thinking is I don't want it to be bound up before it ever gets in there. Alright, let me just kind of push this crank up just a little bit. Okay. So, alright, that's about as far as that'll go. And now you can just take your mallet here and maybe just this side of it and just tap that thing down in there. Okay, our connecting rod looks good on the bottom side here. Just making sure it doesn't hit anything. Okay, and now that has fallen off. Okay, so our piston is back in the cylinder. And now it's just a matter of getting that connecting rod connected back and torque it down, put everything back together, and let's start this thing up. And you may can see that my gasket surface here is relatively clean except for these little pieces here. You know, that's because I'd already taken mine off. And so anyway, I'm going to clean these up real quick and get those ready for a new gasket before I do anything further. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of oil down here on this crank journal before I do anything else, just to get it ready to mate to the crankshaft. So, without further ado, let's see if we can get that thing on there. Maybe, I'm trying to think about where it was whenever I took those bolts out, and I think it was maybe up in this area right here. So yeah, we'll see if that works. Okay, and this is my connecting rod big end cap that I took off, and I have marked it. Converter side has light scratches, and I'm sure there's some sort of a machining way that they're letting us know which side is which, but the way that I could tell was that the side that goes out on mine had these scratches, and I don't know if that's from me whenever I was trying to get this thing out, but anyway, that's the way that this thing connects back in there, along with the bolts there. So let me hit this with just a little bit of oil, and then we'll proceed to put that thing back together. There's our Slight scratches. Bolts here, and I wonder if I can get this thing to a better angle. Maybe right there. I can get this thing in there just a little bit better. There's just no really good way to get in there. If I can get them started, I'll hit them with a crescent wrench or something. Not a crescent wrench. I'm drunk. I can just hit them with a, you know, little ratchet socket. And there's just no easy way to get at these. Try to do this here. This is a 12 millimeter, by the way. And you can see our connecting rod bolts down there. They're just, there's not much room to work with. So kind of my method there, I was just kind of having to turn the flywheel back and forth to get a good place to work with. Now I'm just gonna, you know, rinse, repeat, keep tightening those up in kind of an alternating pattern until we get a little bit tighter, and then we'll throw the torque wrench on it. The torque specification for the connecting rod big end cap bolts is 14.5 foot-pounds or 174 inch-pounds. So what I've decided to do on this is let me get this on. So I set my torque wrench for 140, and I kind of alternated, you know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until I got 140, and I'm going to do the same with 150 foot-pounds, and then 170 foot-pounds, and then just barely up to 174. And in that way, I'm more evenly distributing and escalating the torque. Okay, so this is 150 here. All right. There's 150, and now I'm just going to move this up to 160. Okay, that was quick. And now 170. And that actually hit. Okay, so I'm going to leave those alone. And we'll call that good. And before we can install our camshaft, we're going to need to install these tappets, and I like to use a little bit of this Permatex engine assembly lube. The tappets are interchangeable, intake and exhaust. If you do need the part number on those, though, it is it's this one right here. It's the 12032-2060, and it's those right there. And that Permatex just makes it really sticky, but it also protects it at the same time. So you can kind of put a little bit of that there, and then they should just fit right up in there without much argument. If they do stick, then that's probably a sign that you need to replace your tappets. So, some more of that there. And then we'll stick that one up there. And then that's going to hold that in place while we get the camshaft in place. And now we're going to put up our torque wrench, remembering to take it all the way back down to its lowest 25% of value, just to protect that spring, and hopefully it'll be ready for use the next time. Never hurts to drizzle a little more 10W30 on our camshaft before installation. And kind of a reminder, the two things that we're looking for is we've got a match mark right here where this is going to match up to our crankshaft over here, and it's usually kind of behind this little ring right here. You have to kind of pull that out. There it is right there. That's what we're going to match up with there. And then right here we want to make sure that we're totally matched up on the other side of this. Otherwise that's what actually turns the oil pump in there. So if this doesn't work, in addition to your oil pump not working correctly, the whole thing is gonna sit out, too far this way. So we'll address both of those things once we get in there. And you'll see you can kind of turn the oil pump here with your finger. See, I turned it from horizontal to vertical, and so in that way you can kind of get it where you want it to be, with relationship to where your mark is, and where your gear on the back of this lines up. So I think I'm happy with that right there. So let's try that. Actually, need this to come around a little bit. Almost. Okay, so it went in all the way, and I know that it's made good contact with the contact back there with the oil pump, because whenever I'm looking straight down in here, I don't have any real gaps. So our two marks there are lined up, and I think we're ready for the next step. And if you're looking down in here, this is kind of what we're looking to see with respect to the gap there between the crankshaft and the camshaft. Okay, so the remaining procedures are going to be the same as my crankcase bearing replacement video, which I will post a link to below. So I'm not going to bore you through the rest of the reassembly process. We'll just pick up on the other side whenever it's reassembled and ready to test. Okay, so I wanted to give you a quick update of the reassembly process. We have put a new starter on there. I've started putting some of the shrouds back together, and I've realized that this actually, I need another piece that goes up under here. But anyway, so we got the new starter, new carburetor here. Let's see what else. I filled it with oil. Don't want to forget about that. and we have a new battery here, as well as, and I'll show you more later, the new wiring harness. In the description I will include all the part numbers of these, as well as a breakdown of the cost, because I am curious in keeping a running total of how much this project is really turning into. And so yeah, that's part of the fun. So I'm going to finish putting these engine panels on, and I'll give you another update in a minute. So let me share with you how, if you're doing this yourself, the best way to put this thing back on. I figured out this is the cornerstone piece right here. So the bottom piece is this plate right here, then this plate, and then this is on top. And you've got to get those things to line up, and you kind of have to pull up on this to get this bolt or the screw to bite there. So anyway, I'll kind of walk you through, or I'll just kind of show you how some of these panels line up here. And this thing is just one solid piece, so there's not going to be any issues over on those. But over here, it just kind of fits down in there. And then these two things over here, those will go together like so. There. So let's finish buttoning this up and get the thing in the dang mule. Okay, we also got a new governor assembly to add to the mix here. Just gonna go in just right there. The and I will leave you a parts list of all the things here, but so much of this stuff was missing. In addition to the plate itself was in pretty rough shape, so I decided to replace the whole thing. I did reuse this little electrical component here. Okay, and we'll snug those up. We can reconnect this black wire here to this terminal. Okay, that's good. Now we have a spring that runs, let's see here, this goes in the second hole, the hole closest to you, of the governor arm. That down in there. Alright, then we'll use some needle nose pliers to connect this over here. Okay, that looks good. I did figure out what these two mysterious holes here are for. I found an errant bolt here along with a connector that will kind of hold the spark plug wire back. Alright, so the next thing we need is to connect this portion, this linkage rod here, over to the carburetor. It just kind of pops in there. And then these little bitty wires here, I just kind of use the needle nose pliers again to position them in the same holes as the other rod there. There's that one, and let's see. There we go. Okay, so now this is all linked together. And here's a shot from this side of the whole assembly there, and the holes that were used. And then so your throttle cable will connect in here and operate like that. And to get the engine back in, it's going to be a similar process to get it out. We have one central jack back there, and then we have a I'm sorry, that was a jack stand. One jack stand back there, and then the jack right here. We're going to put it right here, and it's going to kind of lift that other side up, which is possible because we have disconnected the shock. So let's go ahead and get that thing ready, and we'll throw the engine in there and get this thing started. Okay, now the shock is reconnected, the engine is in. We just need to reconnect the engine bolts, and there's one at each corner. 1, 2, and then 2 on the other side of this. Before we tighten our engine mounting bolts on the bottom there, we want to go ahead and stick the converter case on here and tighten up all of these bolts just to make sure that it's gonna fit correctly. You know, I think the factory service manual recommends an assembly jig. We don't have that jig, but we have to have some way of trying to keep these things oriented, the gearbox here and the engine here, keep them oriented to where the engine is not, you know, too far this way or too far this way. And so this is going to help us, you know, it may not be as perfect as factory, but it's going to give us a good sense that at least these things will connect correctly. And you can see we got a new bolt there to replace the one that was missing. Okay, now we can go in and put our bolts in the engine and mount it up with the confidence of knowing that it's gonna line up more correctly with the gearbox. And the torque spec for the engine mounting nuts is 18 foot-pounds or 216 inch-pounds. And that's here, 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 and here. Let's go ahead and pick up the cost as well of the new bracketing and the new starter relay circuit back here, and new fuel tank, new fuel cap, new gauge, new filter, new fuel lines, used but complete wiring harness off of eBay, new hour meter to me, also used off eBay, tires given to me by a friend, rims given to me by a neighbor, fancy fender retraction free, found that bungee strap in my wife's car. Okay, you got the air intake and the choke cable connected. Got the neutral position switch connected. Kind of place that boot over there if we can. Connected the starter trigger wire and the positive lead to the battery. And connected these 3 wires. The 2 yellow ones connect to the 2 green ones. Those go to the stator. And then the black one here connects to black, and it's your ignition. And we're going to reconnect this hose coming from the fuel pump to the crankcase. This is what gives the fuel pump its pulse. It's a mechanical fuel pump and not a electronic. So there's that, and we'll put that clamp on there. Okay, and we got our throttle cable connected here and here. Okay, the exhaust pipe here is in, and the best way that I found to get this in here was just push the straight end down in here and just kind of wind the thing around. You can see the other end down there. Now we'll connect the muffler. Also important is to connect your grounding, your negative right here, that big wire. It goes into, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a nut right there, or a bolt right there, that connects that to the frame. Okay, so I can't think of anything else that I may have forgotten. I think we're ready for a start. So we're in neutral. I'm going to go ahead and choke it, and let's see if we can get it to turn over. Lights are off. All right, let's take the choke off. Try this again. Oh, we're leaking gas. In usual fashion, I omitted one of the most important things. I never connected the fuel to the carburetor. So we've got that connected. We're going to work on cleaning up our mess here, and then try that again. Okay, and now take 2 with the fuel line connected to the carburetor. Alright, I'm going to take the choke off. It's running. So, take a look at this. Look at how this baby is just purring. Wow, too cool. And it just sounds really healthy. So let's try to give it just a little bit of gas here. Alright, and you can see some of that smoke. There's some old funky stuff in that exhaust that I'm sure is going to burn out for us. But man, I could not be more excited. So if you enjoyed the video, if you liked it, we're going to call this a success for today. Remember to check out the description for all the parts listing and other information. Please consider subscribing, give it a big thumbs up. Hope to see you down the road.